When I saw that guy running on the sidewalk, shirtless, his muscular body glistening with sweat under the morning sun, my eyes followed every movement of his defined muscles contracting and relaxing, making my heart race in a way I had never experienced before. I was so distracted by that unexpectedly provocative sight that I lost control of the steering wheel for a brief moment, almost crashing the car into the curb. I felt my chest pounding hard, a mix of shock and something more intense, a strange heat rising through my body. From that moment on, the image of that CrossFitter running, his broad chest heaving with each step, his low-cut shorts revealing a bit of his defined hips and contracted abs, began to invade my thoughts constantly, almost obsessively. I, who had never looked at another man in that way before, now found myself fantasizing about that scene repeatedly, feeling intrigued and tempted by the idea of approaching that world. Maybe it was an excuse to see him again. Maybe just to understand this unexpected desire he had awakened in me. That same night, while taking a shower, I let the hot water fall slowly over my body, imagining what it would be like to join a CrossFit box. The heat of the water reminded me of the sweat dripping down that stranger's chest. For the first time, I allowed myself to admit that I wanted more than just starting to train. I wanted to feel that same intensity, that same heat, and maybe even reconnect with that mysterious man who, in a single instant, had turned my world upside down. I was 41 years old and knew it would be a huge challenge to start something as intense as CrossFit at this stage of my life. My body wasn't as young as it used to be, and the idea of being in an environment full of younger people with sculpted bodies made me insecure. Still, that shirtless man running wouldn't leave my mind, making it impossible to forget the strange desire growing inside me. One day, I gathered the courage to bring it up with my wife while we were sitting in the kitchen after dinner. I remember clearly the intrigued look on her face, narrowing her eyes, trying to decipher the reason for my sudden urge to venture into CrossFit. Her first reaction was suspicious, but she soon smiled warmly, placing her hand on mine and encouraging me to go for it. As we talked, I felt a tightness in my chest, a slight guilt hidden behind my words, since the real reason went far beyond physical fitness. Still, I accepted her support, feeling it was my chance to explore this growing curiosity more deeply. That night, lying next to her, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, I imagined that sweaty body running again, and wondered if I was really ready for what I was about to discover about myself. Sometimes I would drive slowly past the box, my eyes discreetly trying to catch a glimpse of that mysterious CrossFitter, hoping to see his sweaty body, muscles contracting in effort, breathing heavily after some exhausting exercise. But he was never there, only other men, equally strong and attractive, but none of them could awaken in me that burning sensation I had experienced during that first visual encounter. Finally, after many days of imagining, I mustered the courage and signed up. My heart raced as I entered the spacious box for the first time, immediately feeling the strong scent of sweat mixed with the smell of iron from the bars, the rubber of the mats, and the aged leather of the equipment. My first day was calm, surrounded by welcoming smiles and words of encouragement from the more experienced members. Some greeted me with firm pats on the back, making me feel a different energy in the contact with those strong hands. I noticed the defined bodies around me, men focused on their movements, muscles glistening, standing out under sweat-soaked shirts. But even so, I couldn't spot the man who had sparked my initial interest. Deep down, I felt a tinge of frustration, mixed with an even more intense desire to see him again. I left the workout satisfied, but secretly still wishing he would show up at some point, so I could better understand the reason for the restlessness pulsing in my chest. The days passed slowly, and the mysterious CrossFitter never appeared. Maybe he had changed his training schedule, or even switched gyms. At first, his absence frustrated me, but soon my attention shifted to another man who attended the same time slot as me. Richard was around 40, practically my age. He was a cheerful, friendly guy with a soft, comfortable body, very similar to mine, which immediately created a sense of connection. He had a thick, well-groomed beard that added extra charm to his handsome face, marked by a wide, mischievous smile that always seemed to hide some secret or naughtiness behind the jokes we exchanged. Married, Richard was going through a rough patch in his relationship, and that brought us even closer. Between exercises, we shared personal stories, often exchanging jokes loaded with double meanings that left a pleasant tension in the air. One afternoon, after an especially exhausting workout, we openly talked about our CrossFit goals, and in a playful tone, a fun bet emerged between us. The challenge was simple. Whoever reached their goal first could ask the other for something. It couldn't be money, but anything else was fair game. A special gift, a dinner, a barbecue, or even something more personal and provocative. The moment we made that bet, we exchanged a deep, brief look, full of possibilities that went beyond the initial joke. I felt my heart race a little, realizing that the bet had just opened a secret door between us. Richard smiled mischievously, subtly running his tongue over his lips as he shook my hand, sealing our agreement in a provocative way. I left the box that day with a pleasant shiver running through my skin, knowing that something new and exciting had begun between us. The deadline for the bet was approaching, and a chill in my stomach started to take over. I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement every time I thought about the possibility of losing. Richard, with his provocative demeanor, took every opportunity to tease me, throwing suggestive phrases that made me tremble. One night, after the workout, as we dried the sweat from our faces with our towels, he looked at me deeply, flashing that mischievous smile that always drove me crazy, and said in a husky, provocative voice, "So, are you ready to pay up? Because if I win, you're going to have to deal with me." I felt my heart beat stronger at that moment, my breath becoming a little uneven. I watched his eyes sparkle with an irresistible mischief, and his thick beard seemed even more attractive in the half-light. I swallowed hard before responding with a smile, trying to hide the heat rising to my face. "I don't know. You might be the one who ends up having to deal with me," I shot back, returning the provocation and trying to hide how much I was already imagining the intentions hidden behind his words. Richard let out a delicious laugh, running his hand through his hair and staring at me as if he were slowly evaluating my body. In that instant, I could have sworn I saw his eyes quickly glance down, noticing the growing bulge in my workout pants. A tense silence fell between us, broken shortly after by some random joke, which served only as a cover for the growing desire between us. That night, at home, while taking a shower, my thoughts revolved around what exactly Richard intended to ask as payment for the bet. My mind wandered through bold possibilities, making my body burn under the hot water, as I wondered if I was really ready to pay the price for that delicious provocation. Finally, the day of the evaluation arrived. I woke up early, my heart beating faster than usual, filled with a nervousness I couldn't quite explain. It was just a joke between two friends, but after Richard's teasing, my body seemed to react more and more intensely to his suggestive words and looks. When I arrived at the box, I found Richard already waiting for me with that mischievous smile, his eyes bright and full of anticipation. His tight shirt highlighted the soft, attractive curves of his body, his strong, smooth arms contrasting with that delicious belly I had discreetly admired so many times. I immediately noticed the strong scent of his cologne mixed with the warm, natural smell of his skin. As we waited for the evaluation results, I noticed his slow, provocative approach. He looked at me with a deep gaze, smiling in that mischievous way that always drove me crazy. "So, are you ready to pay up?" he asked in a low tone, almost a whisper, his lips close to my ear. His voice sent immediate shivers down my neck, my skin tingling subtly from such close contact. My breath caught in my chest for a moment. A delicious tension settled between us, and for a moment, It felt like the world around us had disappeared. I had no idea what Richard wanted, but I was increasingly certain that my desire was far greater than the fear of what might happen next. I replied, trying to hide the slight tremor in my voice. Of course. What do you want? He smiled slowly, biting the corner of his lips slightly, that mischievous smile that always left me with a strange warmth in my chest. His gaze, deep and provocative, slowly traveled down my body, before returning to meet my eyes. I'll tell you later. I'm still evaluating, he said in a soft, almost teasing tone, while running his fingers slowly through his thick beard. His expression said far more than his words. I felt a wave of heat rush through my body, imagining what exactly Richard was evaluating. My eyes discreetly followed the movement of his hands, the growing warmth in my chest, making me realize that perhaps what he wanted was exactly what I had been secretly desiring for weeks. A few days passed, and on a quiet Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Richard. I immediately felt a chill in my stomach as I answered. Hello? His voice came in a husky, almost playful tone. Today, I want you to pay me that debt. A shiver ran up my spine, my heart racing in my chest. I smiled nervously and teased back. Oh yeah? And what exactly do you want? He chuckled softly, in a way that made it clear he had something very specific in mind. I'm not going to tell you now, but I'm home alone today. My wife went to spend the weekend with her mom. So get ready, he said in a sensual tone, loaded with innuendo. I swallowed hard. My body reacted immediately, a wave of heat washing over me as I imagined the countless possibilities of what he meant by that. All right, I replied, trying to stay calm, not wanting to ask for more details. He smiled again on the other end of the line before hanging up, leaving me restless and imagining what that night had in store for the two of us. I quickly made up an excuse for my wife, feeling a growing nervousness in my chest as I said I was going out to meet some friends. I drove to Richard's house with my heart racing, each beat reflecting the anxiety coursing through my body. When I arrived, he greeted me with that mischievous smile and a look full of intent, wearing only light, loose shorts, his chest exposed, revealing his soft belly covered in dark hair that provocatively disappeared under the fabric of his shorts. Come in, make yourself at home, he said in a husky, inviting voice as he guided me to the living room. We chatted casually as he poured whiskey. We drank slowly, trying to disguise the growing tension between us, laughing at silly things, until Richard slowly moved closer to me, his eyes fixed on mine, a glint of desire evident on his face. He took a deep breath, letting the silence build the anticipation, and then murmured provocatively, You know what I want? He asked, his lips curved into a mischievous smile. Before I could respond, Richard began to reveal it slowly, gradually exposing the enormous size that made me hold my breath immediately. I had already imagined it would be something like this, but the size, the shape, and the boldness of that gesture were even more intense than I expected. My entire body trembled at the sight, my heart pounding frantically as he smiled, satisfied to see my nervous and clearly excited reaction. I knew there was no turning back. I was there, completely surrendered to whatever he had planned. Richard moved even closer, the woody scent of his cologne mixed with the natural warmth of his body enveloping me completely. His breathing was heavy, and before I could react, I felt his firm fingers sliding down the back of my neck, holding my head with authority, guiding me slowly closer. My heart raced, my mind a whirlwind of unfamiliar sensations. I didn't even know exactly what to do at that moment, but the desire in his eyes left no room for doubt. The heat of his skin, the way he guided me with natural ease and confidence, made me simply go with the flow. I held my breath for a moment, feeling his firm touch, his dominant presence, and then, without thinking too much, I improvised. I gave myself to the moment, experiencing something I never imagined I would do, while the heat of desire took over me, erasing any hesitation that remained. The warmth of my mouth made Richard tremble from head to toe. His body reacted instantly, a visible shiver running through his skin as he let out a heavy, almost hoarse sigh. I felt his fingers tighten slightly on the back of my neck, as if he were trying to maintain control. But his body already gave everything away. He was completely surrendered to the moment. In the following days, what started as a bet became impossible to ignore. We repeated our nights together, exploring this new desire more and more, meeting in different places, each time bolder, more intense. What once seemed like a simple game turned into a burning secret between us. But this is only part of the story. If you want to hear the full version, uncut and with all the details, click the link pinned in the comments and discover everything that happened between us. With love, Felix.